Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to do a little update on the ruined Roadster is what we're calling it now. The little Roadster that we bought in Auburn, Indiana, that was a hot rod that was converted and restored into an original 4-cylinder car, and now we got it and we totally effed it up by taking the fenders and running boards and the boring old man stuff off. So we're going to continue forward with that. So my whole idea with this car is to kind of do this car much like a guy in the World War II era, Dry Lakes era, would have done a Roadster. So maybe you got a Roadster from, you know, your grandparents or something or whatever that was a well-used car, but still nice, and you would basically upgrade or hot rod it as you would go. So a lot of times you would see in old photos, they would take the fenders and take some of the parts off, take it to the Dry Lakes and run it around, or just run it around with no fenders, and then keep upgrading. So you took it there with your 4-cylinder, you ran it at the Dry Lakes, you run it around your town, you're getting beat by all the V8 32s, and you need to upgrade your car. So we're going to work on, this has been my plan since I got the car, to put a early Flathead V8 in the car and kind of upgrade it. So we have an engine that we picked up a little while ago in Maryland from one of our viewers that is a good used engine he had in a 35 Ford. He had run it on in the car and then run it on a run stand himself, sold it to us as a stock engine. And what we're going to do is first run it as a stock engine to make sure that it is good, it's not cracked, doesn't overheat, decent oil pressure, all that stuff. Then if it is good, we're going to just upgrade it a little bit, put a little camshaft in it, some finned heads, 2 carburetors, paint it up to make it look nice because this car is obviously nice, and put it in with a floor shift transmission and slide it in here. And but we're trying to get this engine ready so that we can do the conversion. So today is a little bit of running discovery and then hot rodding an engine and running it again. So it's probably going to take a while, but that's basically the process for this video. So let's get started.
Blew the hose off. Well, that ain't good. 170, 75.
All right, so after Steve got the engine running, we got this on the stand. He's been digging into it, and we tag team getting the clips out and getting the valves assemblies all loose and ready to go to take apart. The whole idea with this engine is to hop it up a little bit for the green Roadster, as we mentioned in the beginning of the video. But we want to clean this thing up, and we can't just leave it stock. That would just be boring. But what we did find, we're taking it apart. The car has, pistons are, it's hard to see, but they are 80 over somewhere. You take my word for it. So it's 80 over. It was a 221. We think this might be a 35, 36, or a 36 LB block, we think. It's got the old Rebuilders tag on it, and some of the folklore I've heard is that they always used LB engines when they did the rebuilds. So hopefully this is. Other good thing about it is Steve already pulled them out, but there's adjustable tappets in this, and the bores, the valley for the lifter bores has been drilled. So that makes it really nice for hopping it up. So we did a little shopping in my stash upstairs and pulled some parts to dress it up and make it go a little faster and give it some rumpty dumps. So we got a Winfield cam here. It's a Winfield 3/4 I've had in my stash for a while. It's got the cam gear still on, aluminum cam gear, so that's good. We picked up a Schaefer. I went through my stuff upstairs. We found a complete Schaefer aluminum flywheel with brand new clutch disc and pressure plate. So we're gonna use that, which will help a little bit. And then I got these cool heads that I found somewhere, I don't remember. But these are basically heads that were made, we think, the folklore is in the 70s or so, or maybe 80s. A guy in the New England area was repopping or making his own, not repopping, made his own heads. He had them cast. He used to sell them at swap meets and advertise in some of the magazines and stuff. But this is a set that's never been run. They haven't actually been finished drilled, so they've been machined. The hard part's been done, so they have the valve pockets and everything are all done in it. It's all fly cut, which is great, but they didn't drill and tap the holes yet for the water pumps, spark plug holes, and then most importantly for the head studs. So we'll need to do that on the mill, get that done, but that's, for beginners like us, that's not terribly hard. Grabbed an Edelbrock regular. This is the style of Edelbrock intake back in the day they made that kind of was a copy of the Wyant. So this is out of our stash from Minnesota, nice and clean. With this, we're going to be painting the engine up, so we wanted to use fairly clean, nice parts, which is good. And yeah, so we're going to dig into this thing, pull the oil pan, check to see if it is an LB engine, which we'll show in a little bit. Steve's ready to pull the camshaft out, but the biggest thing is we got to clean the cooling system. This thing ran pretty good for, what, 20 minutes or so? Steve
needed the fan, though.
Yeah, okay. So
once you turn the fan on, it was fine, but without the fan, it was getting...
It was creeping up.
Yeah.
Okay, but we know that it wasn't cracked because usually in 5 or 6
No, it was just creeping. It was what I thought it would be, just dirty cooling system.
Yeah, and then the hose that popped off, that was just an old hose, clamped not tight enough.
Someone may have forgotten to tighten.
Yeah, it happens. But Steve was able to, Mike was able to watch the replay and we figured that out. So that wasn't like a overpressurizing, just a small oversight. So
oops.
No big deal. So yeah, so now the next thing is clean this thing up really good. We got to get these cooling ports. I mean, that right there is like pinhole sized on these cooling ports on the engine. There was some that I like broke out already with my finger where there was big chunks at the bottom and around. So we got to go through, do our normal deal, blow it all out, vacuum it out, clean it out really good, get the cooling system as clean as possible, and then we can start hopping it up. So exciting stuff. We'll get working here and hopefully start putting this thing back together and getting it cleaned up and painted.
Steve's been stuck in
He's been
Bridgeport
on the
hell.
Bridgeport making chips for days.
Yeah, I drilled a lot of holes.
What was that, 42?
42 holes, yeah.
And it turns out when it's an extremely thick head that's like, what, 3 inches thick?
It's got to be close to 3 inches thick, yeah.
Yeah. It takes a while.
Made a lot of chips. And we'll see how it worked.
But we had to measure and get the head. Steve drilled it the same size as iron heads.
Oh,
That's how he wanted it.
that's how it's supposed to go. Yep.
So he drilled them with the size hole that the iron heads are, which are very tight tolerance. And any stud that is tweaked a little bit or a hole that is off even a 64th or something suddenly becomes a problem. So we ended up measuring a bunch of my extra heads I have upstairs, and they were like, I don't know what they were, like
They were up close to a half-inch hole.
yeah, they were basically like a half-inch hole, but I mean they were 16th difference or something.
Yeah.
Which isn't a lot, but we recently had a set of heads that somebody went crazy and drilled out to 9/16ths, and that gets into the head gasket area and becomes a problem. So we were very gun shy with that.
Kept the holes as small as possible.
Yeah, so Steve drilled them all out. I think we ended up a couple sets of the heads were at like 5'1", which
We're
is
at 3364.
3364. So we measured a bunch of the heads. Some of them were like 4'9", 4'8'9", 5'1". So we kind of averaged it out, and there was a bunch of heads that were 5'0", 5'1". So we decided that to kind of, probably for that reason, they were doing that. So Steve went to that, and as you can see now, it's pretty easy to go on. The other side, I think you just got to tap it a tiny bit with a mallet, which is fine. But before we were like, really had to tap it on and be perfect, and it was dragging on the studs. So
Yeah.
that was the big part of these heads. So if you're ever looking to buy heads that are new old stock and undrilled, be prepared to spend like $2,000 in labor if
Yeah.
you value your time.
Yeah, get ready to lose a week.
So now he's got these on. We got what? The
Steam ports?
You got to drill the steam ports in the back. The spark plug holes are already drilled but need to be tapped. And then they have these big holes in the back for, I guess, a heater.
Something like, yeah.
I would guess that that's why they put them in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to probably plug those and tap them just for plugs. We were talking about maybe it would be cool to put coolant sensors in the back of these, but I think with a mechanical gauge, it might stick out and hit the firewall. We're not sure, but we're going to plug them for now. The water pumps luckily have gauge ports in them, so we can kind of make a decision from there. But
And then the water pumps have to get tapped.
yeah, water pumps have to get drilled and tapped, which is another process, but looks cool.
Yeah, it does. It looks good.
Steve had to throw it together last night just to like.
The bulk of the holes have been drilled. There's only
Yes.
like 5 more to drill.
Exactly, yeah. We're over the top of the hill, heading
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it looks cool though.
Yeah, it
I
does.
dig it. Awesome. All right, so I took on the not fun task of removing all the head studs out of this. I've had some really good luck lately of not breaking head studs. This engine, not so much. So I ended up breaking one on the other side, two on this side at the top here. As soon as I put any torque on them, they just instantly broke. So don't think there's much we could do. So I'm going to try first my method with the TIG. Take one of these, it's actually a 3/8 nut, but it's like an oversized hex, and put it over top of the stud. I'm going to try and get in there with the torch and heat it, put some heat in it and get some filler rod in there and fill it up, and hopefully I can crack these loose. It's always a guess if it'll work or not, but we're going to start with that process. Fingers crossed to get that. Steve's working on, he's got his final drilling, I guess.
Yeah, the last hole's necessary.
So he's doing on these early heads, the water pump is in the heads. So he's doing the steps of drilling and tapping these for the early pumps, which are there. So that impeller goes in here, and then you have those studs. And like the one he's about to do right now is the blind hole. So we have to be careful to drill that, tap it, not to punch through, to save having another leak point potentially. But otherwise, they're pretty much good to go. So getting close. Once I get these studs out, we can tape this thing up and prime and paint it, which is exciting. But we got to get past these last couple hurdles, and then we might be onto the fun stuff of bolting cool parts back on it on a shiny engine. So that's where we're at, and keep working and hopefully start assembling this thing here in a day or so. Alright, so we tried the welding thing and it did not work. That sometimes works, sometimes does not. So we're using, luckily, Steve remembered that we had this Evolution mag drill. They sent us this a while ago, and we only use it for us, it's more like emergencies.
Right, yeah, it's really good when you need it.
Yeah, so.
Not an everyday tool, but on a job like this, it's outstanding.
So we have the time certs that Steve has done. We've done them a bunch off camera, but Steve does them occasionally. Where sometimes these head studs will just pull out. They've been stripped, they've been messed with over the years. So he successfully has done this before. I'm usually traveling for whatever reason, so I'm not here when he's doing it, so I'm getting an education. So what we were doing in the last couple, this is the last one, we drilled it out and we got it really, really close to the point where it was almost paper thin. And then I took a carbide burr and kind of the tapered carbide burr and just created a little bit of a taper, and then I took the correct tap that we need, the 7/16 14, I believe it is, course, and I ran that in, and it almost worked like an easy out. As I was turning it in, it was kind of taking the threads out and then just cleaned up the threads, and it worked out really well. So we're using this to be accurate for our initial drilling for a couple sizes, and then we're going to use the tap to kind of clean it all out, because I tried an easy out and it just didn't do anything. It's too tight in there, so we got to just kind of cut it out of there. So I don't trust using a drill bit that's like the exact size, because if you're off like a 64th or something or a 1,000th, it could fuck up the thread. So what we're going to do is drill this one out. This is the last one, number 3 out of 3, and see how it works. This thing's very loud though.
It is quite loud.
All right. I'll be the oil guy and the magnet guy.
All right.
I don't know where my magnet's at, but yep, let's do it.
Already. We were so set it up, it's still only remove, having removed anything.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I could definitely open it up by hand a little bit,
Yep.
and then just run the tap in. All right. All right, so last couple shots last night, I decided to come back out and spray the rock moss green. So I ended up using, there's the engine, ended up using this restoration shop. I think TCP sells it. We're not affiliated, just they had the color I was looking for. I used them on my lacquer paint when I did the black lacquer on the DeLorean Roadster and blended in the lacquer, and I was pretty happy with it. So they have a lot of these like kind of old school colors. They had this rock moss green, which I thought was a really nice dark green that kind of matches. Maybe it's a hair darker than what it would have originally been for the early Ford engine color, but I wanted a little bit darker of a green color, and I think this is like phenomenal. The hardener has a little bit of like a shine enhancer in it, for lack of a better term, and it gives it just a little bit of a sheen, but it's not crazy. Makes it look real nice. So obviously we used the heads and the intake. They were just for masking, so I didn't give them a full coat of paint. They just got overspray on them, so we can just pull them off, put our gaskets on, put our good heads and intake on, and we didn't have to do that tedious task of masking around all these little ridges and everything. So now we got this all painted, we could take the engine and move it over to the engine stand, the run stand, and Steve can just start working on putting in the head studs. We ordered from, I think it was Offenhauser or Speedway sold them, whatever. They're just longer head studs for the thick aluminum heads. So we ordered a full set of those so he can run them in with some sealant on each of them to seal up the studs, and then start assembling everything and getting it ready to run. But man, I'm really happy with this green color. It's gonna look awesome in that Roadster. That Roadster's a nice dark green and a little bit of black and aluminum bolted on there. It should just look bitchin' when it's all set up. But we're gonna move this, put it on the stand, and get on to the next step of assembling. We got fuel and
Let's see what up.
well, that was a good sign.
That was a good sign.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. That's pretty.
Right.
Sounds like the starter's hanging up.
It does. It's kicking the car, starter isn't kicking out.
All right.
Ready?
Try it again. We gotta change that
Yep.
starter.
God damn it.
Starter was fine.
Yeah, worked fine.
Maybe we pull it out and put some grease on the.
I checked it before I put it in. It spun pretty easily. You know, it was a pain in the ass to get in though. Maybe I messed it up.
Oh, or can't see how, but.
I don't either, but
Do we have another starter kicking around?
I don't think so.
That's the run stand starter.
Yep.
All right, so yesterday at the end of the day, typical, we were finishing up multiple projects, and Steve and I, definitely Steve, wanted to hear this thing make noise before we ended the day. And we had a couple things kind of cobbled together, but we got it pretty good. And we went to fire it, and the thing, it actually fired off like...
Kicked instantly, yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, almost instantly. Some of these engines, when you have them apart, because they're dry and everything, they'll take a little while. But it kicked instantly, long enough to have Steve saw the oil pressure shot right up and was good. But the starter was making terrible sounds. And we turned the camera off, and Steve, literally it was like 5 o'clock when we fired it. Steve and I were looking at it and realized the starter gear was after it would kick it back, it wouldn't quite clear the flywheel, and then it would draw it back in. And and make terrible sounds. So the only thing we really could figure out was we changed starters, same thing. And the only thing we changed on this thing really was the flywheel. We took the heavy dish flywheel off, put aluminum flywheel on it. And then after thinking overnight, I was texting with Mike. He reminded me that the flywheel on an 8BA and a 59AB are like a 1/4 inch of difference, which is what we needed. And on aluminum flywheels, it's really hard to tell. On original flywheels, you can usually look in this area here, and you can tell very easily by the offset of this area. But on the aluminum ones, it's really hard to tell unless you have it off on the bench, and you see that offset there. So this is the one that Steve had. I'm sorry. This is the one we had on the engine, yeah, because it was kicked forward. And this is another 59AB. So Steve pulled the pan. Luckily, I had a few of these flywheels, and we just had the bad luck of we picked out of 3 flywheels I had, we picked the only 8BA one. Apparently, I had lane that wasn't marked, and I didn't really think about it or remember, but you could see just here the difference in height, just that little bit, and it was just catching the teeth on this one because the flywheel was pushed out just a little bit further. So now that we have the other flywheel on, hopefully we're good.
Yeah.
Steve cranked it. It did crank, but you don't know until it actually starts and kicks back if it's going to work. But at least we had a smoking gun when he took it apart. And that was Mike's memory of all the difference in parts came in handy, because that was something I knew but forgot and didn't check. So we're going to try and fire it up again. Steve made a couple of vacuum plugs. Actually, it was probably good that these vacuum plugs were missing, that he plugged here, because it didn't fire and actually run. It fired and ran for a few seconds and then stalled because we had 2 big vacuum leaks. So we're hoping it will fire off now and we can get it set up and run it, and we'll put water in it and all that stuff. So here we go. Did that disconnect?
Oh, I do.
Now we have spark.
Yep.
That was quick.
That was ridiculous.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
All right, let's try it again. Better. Go ahead. Ooh, that was
I hit the key. All right. Sorry about that. Try it again. I got nervous when the RPM come up like that.
Yep. I think it needs, it's either lean or it's the idle needs to be turned up. But let's try. Got it idling pretty good. Listen how quiet that valve train is. Steve got that valve lash set up just right.
Yep. Got it pretty good that time, I think.
You can tell that fuel pump's working. Oh, we're like 10 minutes into running and we're at 70 pounds oil pressure. I think it's got good oil pressure.
I think it's all right there. One problem we do not have.
Sounds like a hot rod.
That's pretty good, yeah, but like 170 there. 77 there.
I need one more.
Nice.
So we're at 16 and a half minutes plus 3 or 4, so it's 20 minutes or so of idling and running, and
Yep.
it yeah, I mean, even without syncing the carbs and everything, we're damn close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this engine is pretty close. Yep.
All right, so it runs beautifully. Steve did a fantastic job. I did almost nothing on this project, but it came out really good. I think between all the cool parts we have and starting with a pretty good engine and, you know, dolling it up with some nice paint, it came out pretty darn good. And even on our run stand with all our crude wires and things hanging, it still looks pretty bitchin'. Sounds awesome. It idled fantastic. I think this thing will have a great sound to it when it has a, you know, full exhaust system on it and in the car and everything like that. So I have a couple little things we got to go through on this just to button up that we want to do for both visually and also like when you run stuff. These carb tops might be warped a little bit and they were seeping a little bit of fuel out around the seals, little stuff like that that you don't know till you start running it. So we'll go through and check all that stuff and get it all set up. We're going to probably get a shorty power gen generator alternator thing for here, because when putting a normal generator on a lot of these high rises, you literally have to have the exact correct size belt because there is only like this much adjustment in the generator. By using the shorty power gen, it'll get the generator in front and we can run a normal belt and have plenty of adjustment for the belt. Just stuff to make our lives easier when we're putting this in, so we're not fiddling with it or having a ton of problems when we're going to put it in. But overall, runs good, sounds good. This has been a fun one, and it shows you the process of what goes into buying an engine out of a guy's garage to getting it all ready to doll up and run good and put it in a hot rod. It's a lot of work. This one was even more, but I think it came out pretty darn cool. So that's all we have for this one. Again, another video that was like weeks of work into like a half-an-hour video or something, but we're pretty happy with it. Let us know what you think of the sound and how bitchin' this little Flathead is, because it is very bitchin'. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.